So I just found out about an anime that is currently airing right now, and it is called Futo PI. And I mentioned the series to one of my friends, and he told me that it's a sequel to a Kamen Rider series. Now here's the thing, I do not know anything that is about Kamen Rider, and he told me that I have to watch Kamen Rider, and so I did. Now I know what you guys are thinking, what is Kamen Rider? Well, to explain it in simple terms, it is basically Power Rangers, but just one guy. But if you want the long version, here we go. This is coming straight from the Wikipedia. Kamen Rider is a Tokusatsu television series that revolves around various motorcycle riding superheroes who have a bug motif, who fight various supervillains, often described as monsters. To list a few, we have Kamen Rider Kuga, Kamen Rider 01, and Kamen Rider Revice. And then we have the new upcoming one being called Kamen Rider Geats. But today we're going to be heading back into the middle of the Heisei era in Japan. And we're going to be looking at a series called Kamen Rider W, or otherwise known as Kamen Rider W. If you don't know why it's called Kamen Rider W, well, just imagine a little W, and pretty much this is like two different people being put together. I don't know. It's just something dealing with English language. I don't really know a lot, but it could also reference the catchphrase of this series, which is called "We are the 2-in-1 Kamen Rider." If you haven't caught on, this series is pretty much going to have two people inhabiting the Kamen Rider series in one body to fight crime. And also, this series is the first in the Heisei Phase 2 era of the Kamen Rider franchise, so it's pretty much setting up the standards for the rest of this era. So you're probably wondering, what is Kamen Rider W about? Well, before we get into that, go ahead and smash that like button down below, and don't forget to subscribe with notifications on so you don't miss out on any otaku-centered content. And with that, let's get right into the premise of Kamen Rider W. Kamen Rider W is set in the fictional windy city known as Futo, an eco-friendly town that is powered by windmills throughout the town. Within Futo, there's the Sonozaki family, who are actually the villains of this series. They're responsible for distributing these mysterious devices that resemble USB drives that are called Gaia memories to the people of Futo. Little do the people of Futo know, these devices end up turning people into these monsters called dopants. And to make matters worse, the Gaia memories actually carry a dangerous toxin that over time will eventually kill them. But don't worry, we have our self-proclaimed hard-boiled detective Shotaro and his partner Philip. And these are our two main protagonists for the series, and they are going to solve the mystery of the dopants. What's interesting about these two is that by combining together using the double driver, they can turn into Kamen Rider W, and they use this to go ahead and fight the dopants and to keep the town of Futo safe. Now, the way that their powers work is really cool and kinda unique. Basically, Shotaro and Philip use multiple different Gaia memories that are actually like good Gaia memories. I don't really know how to explain it, but they're basically able to switch around the different Gaia memories, and they're able to change into multiple different forms. So, for example, they have a Cyclone driver, and then they have a Joker driver. So together, it would create Cyclone Joker. They, of course, have multiple different Gaia memories, being, of course, Luna, Metal, and Heat. And they can also be combined with other Gaia memories, such as if they wanted to create Heat Joker, they could. You get the point. And together, the duo pretty much try to figure out the mysteries surrounding the Gaia memories and everything that is around it and where they actually came from. Now, with the premise in order, we have to get into our characters. Starting us off is the main man himself, Shotaro. Now, Shotaro is your box standard protagonist. He's a very emotionally driven person with a strong sense of justice. So when you think about him, just think of like Deku from My Hero Academia, Naruto from Naruto, and then Ichigo from Bleach, and also Lucy Heartfilia from Fairy Tail. Now, Shotaro was raised in the city of Futo and holds a great love for this series that caused him actually to want to become a private detective so that he could help protect the city and keep it safe. And in doing so, he tries to make sure that nobody dies under his watch if he can help it. And this could be shown evident through the death of his mentor early on in the series, which he kind of feels like he's a part of it and he was the cause of it. And over the course of the series, we see Shotaro start to come to terms with the death of his mentor, and we get to see him take a vow to continue to protect Futo and uphold all things that he taught him. Shotaro is pretty much just the standard character that you just want to see succeed, very much like the main protagonist of all your favorite anime. But you can't have Kamen Rider W without the other half. And the other half of W is, of course, Philip. Now, Philip is a very book-smart type of character. He really doesn't know how to understand emotions, which leads him to being somewhat cold in nature. But to cope with this lack of empathy, he uses logic to counteract all of his flaws. All of this is due to suffering from memory loss as a young child, and also from being isolated as a child. But due to his isolation, he takes on a new hobby, which is basically collecting random information about random topics that he has somewhat of an interest in. However, due to spending time with Shotaro and company, Philip ends up feeling some sort of empathy and starts to grow a little bit more emotional as the series keeps on going on, and he starts to feel bad for those that he likely did wrong at the first beginning of the series. And one thing that is also very interesting about Philip, besides of course being the other half of W, is his access to the Gaia library. And by using the Gaia library, Philip can pretty much access all knowledge known on Earth. So this allows him to be a very key component to anything dealing with Shotaro's work. And in return, this pretty much makes him a viable part of the whole operation of the Dopants and working alongside Shotaro to protect the town. And of course, the duo needs a head of the detective office, and that role goes to, of course, Akiko Narumi. Akiko is the daughter of Shotaro's mentor. Akiko is shown to be somewhat childish for her age and often referred to as a middle school girl by Shotaro. She often is just there just to carry Philip's comatose-ridden body to a safer location when the two become Kamen Rider W. There really isn't just much to say about her character besides the fact that she sometimes helps them and sometimes beats them with a slipper. I don't know what else to say about her. Now, last on our list is Ryu Teru, who is actually known as Kamen Rider Accel. Ryu works for the Futo PD Paranormal Crime Division. Before arriving in Futo, Ryu lost his whole family due to a dopant that ended up freezing them to death. From there on, Ryu became Kamen Rider Accel to defeat all criminals without mercy. What's very interesting about his character is that he thinks that anybody that is considered a dopant is actually a villain and must be stopped. Over the course of the series, he begins to look at the reason why people became dopants, and we get to see him open his eyes to the real reason why these people are doing what they're doing. When Ryu becomes Kamen Rider Accel, he gains this motorcycle-like form, and it looks really cool, by the way. With this form, he gains a sword that he can use in combat, and allows him to use a burst of energy against his opponents. But now that we have our characters in place, let's get into the story, and the plot, and the setting, all that good stuff. So with this, we're getting into spoiler territory, boys and girls. Alright, so with that out of the way, Kamen Rider W is pretty much a detective story in short. And it's a detective story that's based in the fictional town of Futo. Which, can I mention that Futo is one of my favorite areas of all fiction? One thing that I always look for in any type of fictional setting is just the people and how they interact with the environment and just the setting and everything about it. So that was definitely something that I really enjoyed about Futo. Within Futo, there's a bunch of reoccurring characters that come and interact with our main cast members, and it really just brings the whole setting to life, and it makes you feel like you're actually watching a town breathing and thriving. Some notable people would be Watchman, Queen, Elizabeth, Lily, and then of course the mad fucking lad, Santa-chan. Almost every time that one of these characters popped up on the screen, you were just greeted by some great moment with their goofy, wacky personalities coming out to shine, and it really breaks the mold for, I guess, those more tense moments, and it brings the town to life. Not only are the characters molding the city, but it's also the setting itself, and it's created through interesting landmarks throughout the whole city. This is some of my favorite parts of any work of fiction. For example, one of my favorite works of fiction would have to be One Piece. I mean, I've talked about it a lot on my channel. You already know that I'm a big fan of One Piece. It's one of my favorite mangas of all time. The world building in that series alone makes it stand out just for that reason alone. I mean, you have a kingdom of toys, you have a kingdom that's fully underwater, and then hell, you even have a whole island that is split down the middle to have one side being full of volcanoes, magma, and the other one is just full of glaciers, has a blizzard going on. Oh my gosh. And then you even have one that is up in the sky. That was an old ancient kingdom. And for heaven's sake, this is one of the first things that any viewer comes out and sees. This is what brings your story to life. And Futo definitely did that well. It definitely stands out as a believable town in my opinion. And to add on to the whole realness of the town even has its own radio station that's called Wind Wave Radio. Like, why would you give a name to a radio station if it's not even relevant to the story? Like, I think it's maybe relevant for 1 or 2 episodes, but it's not really relevant. You could have just said it's a radio station, but no, you gave it an actual name, and I love that. This town definitely had a bunch of work put into it and a lot of development going into it, and I can definitely appreciate that from the development team of Kamen Rider W. And with that said, of course, the town does have a problem at hand. They have the rise of the Dopants. And as I said previously, Dopants are the monsters of this story, so if you've ever watched Power Rangers, you know that they have like these weird costume monster things. Well, those are going to be relevant here as well. It's basically just Power Rangers, but with one guy, like I said. Like I said earlier in the video, these creatures are made by Gaia memories, and only through the Gaia memories. And the Gaia memories are actually distributed almost like drugs. And the victims are all told that it will fix all of their issues, which they believe, but slowly and surely it is killing them on the inside. It's up to our detective duos to solve each and every case that comes their way, and to also stop the spread of the devices throughout the town, which leads to them taking on a foe almost every single week. It's almost like a bi-weekly kind of thing, but it's pretty much every week you're seeing a new case. It's kind of like a Monster of the Week kind of formula. I know it might just be me, but this formula actually works really well with Kamen Rider. I mean, we've seen it plenty of times. One medium that I can definitely tell you did not handle the Monster of the Week formula though very well was JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Part 3. Stardust Crusaders used the Monster of the Week format to the max. I mean, every single week you were seeing a new stand user, and it feels like a hurdle that you're just having to get through to get to the main show, being Jotaro versus Dio. And I'm gonna be honest, I did enjoy the ending of Part 3, but everything else about Part 3, it sucked. But with Double, we're learning a lot more week by week about the distribution of the Gaia memories and also the powers within each and every week, and we get to see new powers being unlocked. It's very well executed for the Monster of the Week formula. And in doing this, we also get to learn about the company that's actually running the whole show, which is being ran by the wealthy Sonozaki family. And within the Sonozaki family, there are 3 main characters that we need to focus on. And there's also one that ends up leaving the team just because they don't agree with what's going on. But that's before the story actually begins. The members included are Ryubei, the father, and then the eldest child being Sakio, and then the youngest child being Wakana. And the member that ends up leaving the faction is actually Shroud, and she's a very important character, and she kind of helps out our main trio in their later fights in the series. Okay, so with that setup out of the way, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this story. So part 1 of the story is pretty much just set up for the basic part of Kamen Rider W and how the story is going to actually go moving forward. It introduces the town just like we said before, and it shows Double working in action. Alongside Double's first couple of fights, we also get to see how Shotaro and Philip actually end up taking on cases and solving them. And we also get introduced to these go-go gadget type of machineries that are called mystery gadgets. These gadgets are actually robots that are programmed to help out with the cases. Within these gadgets, we have a sag phone, which is used for Philip to go ahead and communicate with Shotaro, and vice versa for whenever they have to use their henshins. And then we have Bat Shot, which is used to capture images that are hard for the detective to get to, and it's also used to spy on the enemies as well in those hard to reach areas where Philip and Shotaro actually can't go. And then also we have Frog Pod, which pretty much does the same thing, but it only records audio. And then lastly, of course, we have the Den Den Mushi, Den Den sensor, which is pretty much just a light sensor for when the person isn't visible. It's very weird and complicated. I don't know exactly how it works, but it's pretty much just a light sensor. All of these devices are very essential for the duo's work throughout the series. And we also get introduced to the Sonozaki family and what they actually want to achieve towards the end of the series. And that goal would be to ensure that the human race is able to become one with the planet, and pretty much essentially creating everybody to be immortal and not experiencing loss or anything alongside that. One thing that I really liked about the Sonozaki family is that they actually have a reason for why they want to achieve what they want to achieve. Unlike characters like Dio from JoJo's and the Celestial Dragons from One Piece, and then of course Hyuga from Dr. Stone, they experienced a major loss in their lives, being the death of their youngest son, Raito. As a young child, Raito ended up falling into a fountain of Gaia memories, and in return, he ended up passing away due to that. In return, the family pretty much just wants to be able to save their existing family members, and so they don't have to experience any future losses in the near future. It's a really touching story that many people don't want to ever have to face. I mean, I would never want to lose a family member myself. I just couldn't bear the thought of losing a family member that is close to me. Moving further on into the end of the first part of the series, we get to see a new form that is revealed, which is the reverse of the roles for the duo. So with this new form, we'll call Fang. In a moment of crisis where Shotaro is being tied up and being held hostage next to this contraption that could actually kill him, we see the new unveil Kamen Rider W, Fang, and oh my gosh, I love this form. I just love the aesthetic of it being white on one side and then black on the other. It's clean and minimalistic, and I love it. But during the usage of the Fang memory, the duo actually loses control and ends up going berserk. This form is normally dubbed by the fanbase as berserk mode. This is a very common thing that happens in most Rider series that I'm aware of, and it's where the main rider gets a very huge power up in the beginning, but they can't control this power, and with this new power, they end up going berserk. Anyways, the only reason why this is happening is because the Gaia Memories is in total ruin and is caught entirely in flames. This leads to Shotaro having to go into the Gaia library and try to find Philip in order to stop his rampage and to gain control of the Fang memory. This leads to a whole mini arc that's inside of an episode that we have to go and track down Philip, and Philip ends up getting found and is snapped out of the berserk mode, and now we have an amazing new power-up for our duo to work with that will ultimately help them take on future foes, and it also allows for Philip to take the base form as well. Can I mention that I also really like this comment about their strengths, that basically Philip is kind of the brains of the whole operation, and then Shotaro is being the fighter of the duo. I really just love that dynamic of brains and bronze. It really just works as the dynamic duo type of deal that we see in most common shonen or series in general. I love that touch. Anyways, we leave this mini arc learning about Wakana and her role in the Sonozaki family, as well as we get a tease towards the Accel memory. Heading on into the middle of the series, we are heading on into a arc that is dubbed the Weather Arc. And in this arc, we're introduced to Kamen Rider Accel. And well, he's my favorite character. His drive, pun intended, is to find the dopant that ended up killing his whole entire family before he actually became a Kamen Rider. Accel, otherwise known as Ryu, is actually a cop that becomes an ally to the detectives and helps them out with their daily task of the dopant research. And if I'm being honest, this arc is really focused on Ryu and the Sonozaki family as well. And then we also are introduced to a new dopant that is revealed to be the one that actually killed Ryu's family. And wouldn't it be crazy if this dude had some, I don't know, mental disorder or some mental shit wrong with him? Oh wait, yeah, this guy loves Gaia memories. Like, he really likes them. Like, his whole body is covered by these things. He's quite literally a human experiment gone wrong. Anyways, moving on from that, the Sonozaki mother ends up killing her father, aka Wakana, and Raito's father, who is also a dopant himself. Lo and behold that, and then a few episodes later, she ends up falling for, you guessed it, Mr. Human Experiment himself. Oh yeah, I forgot to give you guys his name. So here it is. Shinkuro Isaka, but since his name is kind of hard to say, we'll just go ahead and call him Weather. Not that Weather. That Weather's cool. So right now I'm just gonna say Weather is one of my favorite designs of the dopants in this whole entire series. Like, fuck Clay Doll, fuck Terror, fuck Taboo. This one here is my favorite. Anyways, he is the reason why Ryu becomes a Kamen Rider in the first place. And he is the reason why he goes and helps the duo and becomes a detective himself. But as for memorable moments for Ryu, I definitely have to pinpoint one of my favorite episodes in the whole entire series being the Invisible Girl Dopant episode. So basically, to give a rundown of this episode, there's this girl that wants to use the dopant powers to help her family through her magic show so that they can get better tips and so they can get people coming to the show and all that type of jazz. The only issue, though, is she can't control her powers. And in return, she's like, oh, these guys are researching dopants. So she's like, oh, I'm just going to go and talk to the two detectives that are, researching these dopants. But, Shotaro and Philip are like, we've never seen something like this. We don't really know anything about this. And so they tell her that they will basically go and investigate with her throughout the city. And they go to this bar type of thing. And wouldn't you know it, Ryu's there. And Ryu is, of course, saying that every single person that is a dopant is evil. Anyways, inside of this bar, there's this guy that's playing the piano. And wouldn't you know it, it's Mr. Human Experiment himself. He ends up turning into a dopant and causes massive mini lightning bolts to thunder down inside of the bar, causing the whole bar to go crazy. And of course, the young lady learns that, oh, he's experimenting with the dopants. He probably knows how to control the dopants. And so she's like, I'm going to go with this guy. He seems like he could possibly, be able to fix me somehow. This leaves Ryu actually wanting to go and help her because he feels like she's innocent, but still guilty at some points. And at this point, we finally learn about the Gaia memories and how they are pretty much just killing each and every single dopant slowly and surely through this virus type of deal that is corroded inside of the driver itself. So pretty much every single time that she transforms and becomes invisible, she is essentially killing herself. So pretty much knowing this, she's like, oh, I'll do the next show and then, I'll die. Anyways, Ryu ends up going to the final show and he ends up facing off against Weather there, and he uses the engine driver to save the young lady. And the only way by doing this is like by simulating her heart or something like that. I don't know exactly how he did it, but basically he stimulated her heart. I tell you this story because this is a major turning point, definitely in Ryu's character to wanting to save these people and not being driven by rage and anger and just wanting to go and save these people as best as he can. Moving back to our main duo, we actually see them taking on the Dopant lover himself and them essentially destroying him using their new power-up they got. This new power-up actually came when Philip was in mortal danger. So the way that this new power-up works is it pretty much digitalizes Philip by sucking him up and pretty much turns into this little mini Gaia memory that Shotaro is able to wear. It's really confusing on how to explain it. This new power-up is called the Extreme Memory, and its power comes from the true Gaia memories. Now, in order to use this power-up, the duo have to be really synced together and even more connected as a pair. Due to this power-up, the two are able to take on Weather, but sadly they cannot actually defeat him. But one thing that was very interesting is that Shroud, the character that I mentioned, was the mother of the Sonozaki family. She essentially says that Shotaro and Philip are not actually supposed to be partners, and it's actually supposed to be Ryu and Philip. But speaking of Ryu, we see him in this situation where he's being told that he has to go through this trial type of thing, and that's so he can increase his speed or some shit like that. It's not entirely explained. With a new Gaia memory named Trial, he is essentially told that he has to make it through a whole entire course, which is roughly 200 feet, in under 10 seconds. He of course ends up struggling with this and gets the same exact power surge every single time. After a couple of tries, he ends up getting a call from Mr. Weather himself and is told that basically he's gonna kill everybody that he loves and cares about, and in return that leads Ryu to go and take the trial for a spin again, and he ends up receiving the trial memory from Shroud. Now of course Shroud actually ends up saying that he missed it by 0.7 seconds, but she ends up giving it to him just because she's like, he doesn't have the rage that he used to have, so he's no importance to her anymore. Her motives are gone for him. And Ryu ends up taking on the Weather Dopant, and boy oh boy, he ends up defeating him. But it's actually not through Ryu beating him. It's the Dopant actually beating himself. I'll explain. So pretty much, Weather gets so irritated and pretty much just pissed off that he essentially just starts injecting himself multiple times with just all of these Dopant powers, and basically his body loses control and he ends up exploding. Dark shit. And of course the woman who I said actually was falling in love with him ends up being shocked from his death, and that is pretty much the end of the Weather arc. And with that, we're finally heading into the final arc of Double. It's finally here, and boy, was it a crazy one. We learn about the secrets of the Sonozaki family. We get introduced to the Foundation X, which is also the name of this arc. But with that, let's not waste any time and get right into the Foundation X arc. Now, the Foundation X arc is pretty much where shit goes down. We get to learn about Philip's past, the final parts of the Sonozaki family, and the reason why Gaia memories were created. Starting off with the first episode of this arc, we learn that Philip is actually Raito. Yeah, Philip is Raito. This alone actually shocked me, as I didn't think for a second that Raito was actually Philip. Now, of course, this means that there's some reason for his memory loss, but we'll get to that in a bit. But now we need to turn our attention to the Sonozaki family, which is slowly and surely crumbling piece by piece. This is where we get introduced to the Foundation X. Foundation X is actually ran by one of the characters that was very minor in the Sonozaki household, and we see him at the beginning of the series, and well, I really didn't expect for this guy to become relevant towards the very end, let alone be the guy who is the final villain of this whole series. But I'm not here for the villains, I'm here for the mysteries. I mean, that's why I love anime so much. That's why I like this series so much. There's so many mysteries surrounding it. So with that said, for some reason at this point, Wakana is able to pretty much enter into the Gaia libraries and can interact with Philip and all the books that are inside of the Gaia library, which, let alone, this is very, very interesting. It makes me want to wonder, why is she able to do this? How is she able to do this? And what is driving her to do this? And also, she's able to mess with the whole research process of the Gaia memories because she can mess with Philip inside of the Gaia libraries and ultimately can hinder their research. Anyways, with that out of the way, let's go and let's head into the final stage of the story, being the Sonozaki family. And like we discussed before, Raito is the dead son of the Sonozaki family. And now in the final couple of episodes of the series, we learn how Philip got reborn. And, well, it's confusing. So basically, the Sonozaki family was essentially researching for the true Gaia memory to begin with, and they took their children with them because why wouldn't you? I mean, I would definitely take my 5-year-old with me to go and research some stuff. I mean, what kind of amazing parents are they if they didn't? And while looking for this memory, they of course leave their young, unsupervised Raito right next to the true Gaia memories pit. And while looking for the memory, the young, unsupervised Raito ends up falling into the true Gaia memory, but he was revived and then turned to this avatar type of thing, which he ends up taking on the appearance of what he looks like now. And basically, since that day, Philip has been secluded from society, and his memories have actually been altered by Ryubei until the night that he was rescued by the hard-boiled detective and his partner. Confusing, right? And I say all this because this is the true goal of the Foundation X, to use the Gaia Impact and Wakana to achieve their main goal in creating the perfect world. With this, we end up heading on into a mini arc where we pretty much see Shotaro being afraid of losing his partner, but he's in a hard place because he knows that he has to save Wakana and also has to save the world from what the Foundation X is trying to achieve in doing this. And due to this, we see him go through 2 to 3 episodes where he just refuses to transform into Double, which honestly pisses Philip off because he's like, I just want to die peacefully, you know? Shotaro even claims that without Philip, he would be nothing. But Philip actually knows that his fate is set in stone, and he accepts that he is slowly going to be fading away, and in preparation for that, he sets himself up a going away party, if you will. And this, of course, upsets Shotaro a lot. I mean, who wouldn't want their partner to be just fading away forever, slowly and surely? And he would feel like he's at fault for it all. Philip then comforts Shotaro and tells him that pretty much he would rather save people and die a hero rather than slowly die a painful death. Shotaro begins to understand where Philip is coming from, and he ends up agreeing to go ahead and save his sister and also save the world from Foundation X as well. Shotaro, of course, at this point is still in denial of wanting to lose his friend and tries to use his own body as the source of his power to take on the Foundation X, and also uses the memory devices that we used earlier in the series to also take on these as well. Though it is not enough, and Philip ends up pleading to Shotaro to please transform, which then they tearfully both transform into their final form, being Double Prism Extreme. And in return, they end up tearing into the Utopia Dopant, which is actually the Foundation X leader all of this time. And then, of course, right as soon as that happens, we get to the final moments. The two of them are in this area that looks vaguely similar to the Gaia libraries, and the two of them are in tears. Philip ends up telling Shotaro that he has found peace and pleads for Shotaro not to tell Wakana about him sacrificing himself for her sake of life. And if I'm being honest, this scene was a very, very emotional scene, and it was definitely a tearjerker for sure. I found myself just crying and bawling from the scene. It was really just something that was executed really well by Toei. Everything about this scene was just perfect in every single way. I mean, I really actually for a second there believed that this was an actual relationship between two individuals. They didn't feel like characters at this point. They seemed like genuine people that cared about one another. I can only recall certain series that had this much of an emotional impact on me as this one did. And At this point, Philip is, of course, considered dead. We then head over to the detective office, and Shotaro opens up a gift that was left there from him from Philip. And it ends up being a driver that has 1 slot. With this new driver, Shotaro is able to still protect the city of Futo, and in return becomes Kamen Rider Joker. And can I say that I really just enjoy Joker's design? I mean, I guess I'm just a sucker for minimalistic designs. It's one of my favorite things in all of just art. I love minimalistic. And thus, we enter into the last episode. We see the half-boiled detective Shotaro protecting the city, but this time he's trying to help this young boy named Akira find his sister, Yui. Yui was apparently last seen by a gang named EXE. And EXE has pretty much just been collecting Gaia memories for some reason. And once Shotaro ends up tracking them down, he tries to call for Philip, but of course Philip is dead. Shotaro ends up turning into Kamen Rider Joker, but the gang ends up fleeing the scene and he is forced to retreat as well. We then turn to a flashback from a year prior. Apparently Wakana ends up finding out about Philip sacrificing himself for her, and she demands that Shotaro ends up telling her what happened that day. Heading back into the present, we are greeted by the frog pod that is actually playing an impersonation of Philip's voice. But then we are greeted by the main leader of the gang, being the Energy Dopant. Shotaro ends up getting hit from a blast and is presumed to be dead. But luckily, for some reason, the extreme memory ends up flying into the battle and takes the hit for Shotaro. And lo and behold, the extreme memory is Philip. It's then revealed to us that Wakano was able to actually invoke the Gaia Impact and being able to bring Philip back to life, but it's then revealed that she would have to sacrifice herself in return. But due to the act of sacrifice, it would take Philip's body some time to actually be restored. Thus, Philip had to stay inside of the Extreme Driver until his body was able to be recreated. The final sequence of the show sees the duo doing a final henshin to wrap up Kamen Rider W in its ending. And oh my god, this show was amazing. And as far as we know, there's still trouble that's in Futo as Futo PI exists. But as for Kamen Rider W, this is the end. I really honestly enjoyed this story. What really shocked me is that they were able to convey such a intense story with so much detail into under 50 episodes. That's just simply unheard. I mean, you've had series such as Full Metal Alchemist and other series like that have been able to achieve this, but none to the extent of W. And due to this series, I'm definitely going to be watching a lot more Kamen Rider series moving forward. And in fact, I ended up picking up the most recent series in the whole entire franchise, being Kamen Rider Revice, and I am loving it. And I'm also going to be picking up Kamen Rider Geet as well. If you would like to know my thoughts about those two series, definitely let me know down in the comment section below. And this is also extended to Futo PI, as I'm definitely going to be watching that as well, as it is airing during this anime season. I'm honestly really glad that I was able to get into a franchise such as Kamen Rider at the perfect time, and I can't wait to see what happens with the franchise moving forward. But if you guys haven't already, go ahead and smash that like button down below, and make sure to subscribe with notifications on as well, so you don't miss out on any future content. And with that, I'm Fel Plays, and I'm out. Peace.